Hello, welcome back to my channel where today I'll be showing you how I made this adorable Plague Doctor mask. So recently I've been replaying games that I played as a child, and one of them was Assassin's Creed 2, which is set during the height of the Renaissance. And just like in real life in this period, there are a lot of Plague Doctors around the cities in this game. In the game they heal all wounds, which isn't quite accurate because Plague Doctors are very specifically just for people who are dying of plague. Because even at these times they did know that having the Doctor go to multiple different people with different illnesses would just spread the plague around. But anyway, none of that is highly relevant to this video. All I wanted to say is that these masks really inspired me to create my own really adorable version of the Plague Doctor mask, and I did it all using materials that I already had lying around, so it was a free project to do. Honestly, it doesn't really look like a Plague Doctor mask in the end, it kind of just gives a Venetian mask vibe. But overall this project was quite fun and cute to do, so I thought I'd still make a video on it anyway. But this intro is getting far too long, so let's get into the making. So I've never made a mask before, so I started out by experimenting with brown paper. This took a lot of trial and error to get it to a point that I was happy with, and I don't think I quite got there. I originally wanted the mask to be covered under the beak like the real Plague Doctor masks are, but I just couldn't get the patterning to work for this section, and so I had to just give up on it. Part of me wishes I could have stuck to it a little bit longer just because it would be more accurate to the source material, but I could always add it at a further point if I felt like it. With the pattern all finalised, I then moved on to cutting all the pieces out of wadding and then coating them in fabric. I chose to glue the fabric onto the wadding, and this choice was both good and bad for this project. It was good because it gave the material the right strength to hold that beak shape, but it was also bad because then it just kind of acted like leather. It was incredibly stiff and hard to sew through, and I did all of this by hand, so it was incredibly difficult. The original masks are made of leather, and I presume they must use tools to hand sew all of this, because getting a grip on the needle is quite difficult, and it really ripped up my fingers in places. The more I do sewing projects like this, the more I admire actual sewers and workers who use difficult materials all the time in their daily job. It takes so much physical efforts to do, and I personally just couldn't do this for long periods of time, so it's really admirable that people really enjoy this sort of craft. Anyways, during this process I did realize that the glue was leaking through the fabric a little bit, so I chose to go over all of the fabric in glue to make all the colours match. Even though this did actually make everything more difficult to sew, I just don't like helping myself apparently. Onto the first bit of sewing for this project. I used embroidery thread to attach all the pieces together in a way that mimicked all the stitches you see on actual Plague Doctor masks. I especially wanted to emphasise the joint all the way down the nose, because the nose is the most important part of this design. Historically it's because they needed this space to put medical ingredients like famously lavender and vinegar into them. The whole point is that they have that long nose for those ingredients. I really want to emphasise that that was the most important part of the design. As these masks really look like birds, I really wanted to add a bird-like element to it and also kind of just like a clown core element to it, so I opted to make a really long frill to go around the face portion of the mask. I decided not to pull these too far down the beaks as birds' beaks aren't feathery, and this kind of looked like feathers in a way. I feel like this is definitely why it kind of gives a carnival vibe rather than a doctor mask. When deciding on the frill, I was looking at a lot of reference pictures, and I've never realised how synonymous steampunk has become with Plague Doctor masks, mainly because that doesn't really make sense to me. I always thought steampunk was like a faux Victorian aesthetic, but this style of Plague Doctor mask did not exist during the Victorian period. They'd gone out of style very long time ago, so it doesn't make sense for them to pop up so much in a Victorian aesthetic. Do people know why steampunk and Plague Doctor masks are so joined together? Please let me know, because maybe I'm just misunderstanding both sides of that argument. To me they just seem like completely the wrong period, but obviously steampunk isn't really in a time period, it's just very focused on Victorian period aesthetics. With the frills all made, I then just glued them onto the back of the mask. I didn't sew them at this point as I knew I was going to be doing beadwork along the edges of the mask, and therefore the frills will be naturally sewn into place during this step. And sewing them on now just meant doing that twice, and I really didn't want to do that twice, so I kind of just used glue as a tacking element. Next I went back in and completely changed the eyes. I just didn't like the shape that I managed to get with the eyes previously, and I also noticed by looking at reference photos that a lot of Plague Doctor mask eyes come out quite far, so I kind of wanted to mimic that with my design. So I started out with the same frilled work for the edge, then I took 2 white circles and sewed spirals into each of them, just to give them that stereotypical hypnosis look, which I think is quite synonymous with death, and obviously Plague Doctors were considered like omens of death, so I feel like the two went quite well together. And then I beaded the edges of the white circles with the beads I got from Tokyo in 2018. I never ever do beadwork, hence why I've had these beads for 7 years and I've barely ever used them, and it's mainly because of how time consuming beading is. For example, just one eye took me 15 minutes and the whole mask took a further 3 hours to do, but I did it because it gives a cool effect. And that perfectly segues me onto the next part of this project, which was all the 3-hour beading work. A lot of things in art take a really long time, and when you're doing them, you just kind of have to hope that all the work will come across in the final project. In this case, I do think it takes the project up a notch. I really like how shiny they look when you like turn your head, but that's definitely not always the case. I was trying to get an upcycling project recently to work for hours and hours, and all I got out of it was a cut up shirt with an ugly hem that I will never wear, so it's just scrap fabric now. However, even when things are frustrating in art, I always try and remember that failing is learning. It's definitely the worst type of learning, but it is learning. During this project, I learned that while beading wasn't a failure in this case, it looks really cool. I don't think it's actually worth the amount of time that I personally put into the project. Realistically, what I did with the beading was the same as what I could have achieved by pinning a necklace onto the mask, and therefore I just should have done it that way and saved all this time to get the same result. But obviously that's hindsight, I didn't know that at the time. But going forward, I should probably think of different ways to use beading work that's more intricate, that actually shows the amount of time that I have to put into it. Finally, I decided to add white dots to the base just to bring the white beads into the look a little bit more and make things look a little bit more cohesive. I had also just done my Valentine's makeup for my last video when I was doing this, and I thought my makeup dots looked really cute, so I just transferred them onto this project too. And then finally, I just added a piece of elastic around the back of the mask so I could actually wear it, and this project was finally done and I could finally show you the results. Overall, I'm somewhat happy with this mask. I feel like it's very cute and it's very my aesthetic, but it doesn't really come across as a Plague Doctor mask in any way whatsoever, other than maybe the nose, but like I said, Venetian masks also have these long noses on them. But at least that does go with my inspiration, which was Assassin's Creed 2, as obviously that takes place in Italy. So I can definitely say that this was an Assassin's Creed inspired project, but I don't think I can say it's a Plague Doctor inspired project. I'm also probably never going to wear this mask just because you can barely see in it. You can kind of see just out the top of the eyes, but other than that, you're completely blind in this thing. So I think I'm just going to make it into a wall decoration. I feel like I could pin it up quite well using the strap and just hang it on my wall somewhere and it would look quite cool and clown-like. But yeah, that is it for my thoughts on this project. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like down below. Comment what you think of the final result and subscribe as I post a new video every single week, and I'd love to see you again. But until then, bye!